Today on the program, we have Manuel Guzman, a professor of biology at Middle Tennessee State University.
The only person who ever used my middle name was my grandmother, Manuel Antonio Giannoni Guzman. The premise of a regimen, it's to make things in your life easier.
No, regimen is to keep trauma at bay so you never have to think about your past and why you are as nutty as you are. Howdy, and welcome to the Research Minute Podcast. I'm your host, David Butler. This podcast takes university research from the campus and brings it into the community. We were just talking about names. So let's talk about names. So tell me, where were you raised?
So I was born and raised in San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Okay, and that's the capital of Puerto Rico. Your last name, Giannoni Guzman. Tell me how that works, that hyphen.
So my father's last name is Giannoni.
Mm-hmm.
My mother's last name is Guzman. So when people get married in Puerto Rico, they don't take their spouse's last name, so they just keep their name. And when their children are born, what happens is that you get your dad's last name, and then right after that, you get your mom's last name.
Now, do you have a middle name too?
Yes, I do. Antonio.
So do you get to use that one?
So my daughter sometimes calls me Antonio when I'm done something wrong at home. And she started doing it because I told her once, she asked me, so who calls you by your middle name? And I was like, the only person who ever used my middle name was my grandmother. Mm-hmm. And she usually used it when I had done something wrong.
So, but she was only like, Antonio
or Tonito.
Tonito, which is an abbreviation, is a shortened for Antonio.
Yeah.
So does your mom, when she was mad at you, did she give all four names?
Yeah, she would go
do that for me.
Manuel Antonio Giannoni Guzman. Ven aquí ahora mismo.
There you go. Yes. All right. So let's talk about your childhood. So, raised in San Juan, the whole time of your youth. Did you move around?
For most of my youth until I reached teenage years, I stayed in San Juan. Mm-hmm. So, growing up, I had a couple uncles that live stateside, and I would come visit often. The first time I saw snow, I was 8 years old.
Mm-hmm. And where do they live? Obviously somewhere.
So New York, Pennsylvania. I have uncles that now live in Alabama, which is very convenient because I can just drive down to Huntsville and visit family.
No snow there, though?
No snow there.
Okay.
No. The first time I saw snow was in New York City. Beautiful. And I was just dreaming, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yes. And then 20 minutes later, I was like, I'm done with it.
Yes.
We played with it. But I have a half sister and half brother. They live in Orlando now. So.
Mm-hmm. So in San Juan, you spend most of your time there. So tell me about your parents. What kind of upbringing? Tell me about your siblings and stuff like that.
I am one of two from my mom and dad's marriage, so I'm the oldest.
Okay.
I had a brother who was a year and a half younger than I was, and we grew up together. And then I have a half brother and a half sister that are older than I am, and they were from my dad's first marriage. So growing up, my half-sister lived with us until she grew up, got married, and left. So my parents divorced when I was 10, and it was a pretty amicable divorce. It wasn't like anything dramatic or anything like that. But then that kind of changed the dynamic a bit because then, you go from seeing dad every day to see him every other weekend, and that kind of complicated things a bit. So over time, then he moved to the southern part of Puerto Rico, which is about an hour away driving time. So there was a period there where we didn't really see him. He kept in touch. And then when we became older and got cars, we could drive and see him. But, mostly just it was me. For my teenage years, it was me, my brother, and my mom. Okay. And my mom was first-generation college, so my grandfather and my grandmother was a factory worker. She never got past high school. And then my grandfather was born in Calle, Puerto Rico in the 1917. And he was one of 50 children that we know of.
Wow.
So my great-grandfather
was busy.
He needed farmhands back in the day. And, before labor laws. Yes. So, you have kids, you put them to work in the farm. 50? So when he made it to 7th grade, and then my great-grandfather took him out of school. Right. And basically was like, okay, let's go work in the farm. Right. When he became 18, he was like, I'm done with this. Yes. And he left, became a police officer. Okay. And met my grandmother, and they had 5 kids, but neither of them went to college. Neither of them finished high school. And however, so they had 5 kids, and all 5 of them went to college.
Okay.
Out of the 5, 3 of them got graduate degrees. So my mom became a doctor in the 70s.
An MD.
An MD in the 70s.
Okay.
My uncle and godfather also became an MD. And my other uncle became a lawyer.
Okay.
And then the other 2, one of them for a long time did like ag work with the State Department in Puerto Rico. So basically making sure that the farms were actually keeping up to spec. There was no poisoning. There was nothing going wrong.
Ag extension sort of stuff.
And then my aunt, she did social work.
Okay.
So even though, no college, no education background, they raised basically 5 first-generation college kids.
Yes.
The other thing is, like, this is back in the 70s, so my mom becoming an MD, she was a person of color in the 70s and a female.
Yes.
And so I have a picture, and I keep it at home, of her residency class in New York City, and it's all males, except for this little brown woman in the background, and that's just her. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. So we're breaking barriers already in the 70s.
In New York, she did a residency in New York?
She went to med school in Mexico, and then she did an internship in there's a transfer program for people who study in Mexico and Guadalajara to the States. She did a residency in New York. And then she came back to Puerto Rico.
Okay. And so what kind of medicine did she practice?
She ended up settling for emergency medicine. So she was in an emergency room. Yes. And here's the funny story about that. I actually asked her along the lines, like, hey, so why this?
Yeah, I'd ask her the same thing.
And she told me one day, when I set out to do this, I wanted to be a surgeon. And she started a surgery residency, and she was doing very well. And then she was like, but, surgery is like kind of, and this is her words, not mine, right? She was like, it's very methodical, and people have really large egos, and it wasn't up to my pace. I could have done it, but I really wanted something like that I could help more people and kind of be in the front lines. Sure. And then she's like, and the ER is like a great place to be in the front lines.
It's like filled with trauma.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, all the way through.
So growing up, she gave that up when I was born. So when I was born, she gave the emergency room up and started a family practice. Okay. And she kept that up until I was about a teenager. And when I was 14 years old, she started again in the emergency room.
Okay. So she paused.
She paused.
She didn't give it up. She paused.
She paused
for spending time with the family, because those hours are rough. It's not like you're in the middle of taking out a gunshot wound and go, oh, sorry, clock's up. I got to leave.
Correct.
You got to go all the way through. Next person's not showing up. There's too many people coming in that have trauma. So now there's 2 or 3 physicians working until the pace slows down.
Yes.
With her and your aunts and uncles going to college, obviously it was an expectation that you and your brother are going to go to college as well?
That was the expectation. So growing up, we weren't asked really that many things. So, I had to clean, I had to cook, I had to do like these house chores, but like the real expectation was like you need to get good grades. You're expected to go to college. And back in the 90s, when I was growing up in early 2000s, the expectation, if you were a child of a doctor, is that either you're going to follow the family's footsteps, or there's like these careers are the career paths for you.
Yes.
So I really had like no clue or inkling that I was going to like get into an academic or science field. When I went to college, when I applied for college, I was applying to pre-med. And I was applying my fallback, which is an interesting fallback. Now looking back, I was like, oh, I'll do computer engineering.
Yes. Okay. Because both careers that eventually will pay, that will last, have longevity and good pay.
Yes.
And respect within the community and family.
Yes. So there was that cultural aspect of like, you have to go into one of these, and the family will respect these. So like, and you can imagine the day I came home and I was like, hey, Mom, I don't think I'm going to go to med school. I think I'm going to do a Ph.D. and just do science. That was a conversation. at first it was kind of a shock because, you know, here I had just finished a med school interview that had gone great. And she was like, oh, so like, I'm not going to like sell the practice because you're going to take over it in a couple of years.
Oh,
so she was already like planning
yes.
to this. And then she was like, well, you know, that's fine at the end of the day. And at that point, my brother had kind of like said like, you know, I'm not going to do anything that you guys want me to do. I'm just going to do my own
real
thing.
rebel.
Yeah, no, he was.
I'm going to go buy a Harley and ride across the United States. And
Yep. So I had a conversation with my mom. I had a conversation with my dad, and my dad was like, okay, you know, you might change your mind in the future, and that's fine. You can still go back to med school at that point. Like, he was kind of in denial-ish a bit.
Yeah.
But he was like, you know, go do your thing. My godfather, though, who was a pediatrician, he was like not having it. He was like, listen, I went through the same thing, and you're going to regret this if you go down that line. And he and I are very much alike. So, like, when you put two people of the same character in front of each other, you know, you butt heads, right?
Oh, yes.
And, you know, here's 22-year-old me, and this is a man that I, like, respected. Like, to this day, like, out of all the people in my life, like, I had so much respect for him because he worked diligently. He was locked in every single day, would wake up at 5 a.m, go and feed like the animals in my grandmother and grandparents' house when they got older. Then he would start doing stuff at his house. He would go have a full day of work. Then he would take his kids to bowling league or activities. Then he would come home and like he lived a very regimented life and very disciplined life.
Yes.
And to and you know, this is kind of it's not sad, but it speaks to the man. Like the day that he actually passed away, like he went and worked a full day.
Yes.
And he came home and, you know, although it's kind of sad, right? He died in his house with his family, right? Yes. But he like lived on his own terms, and he made sure that his family was taken care of every step of the way. And I do I always respected that. Like he was very much like, this is a family thing.
Yes.
I and whenever I had like any issues that I like needed like an arbiter, or I had like any, you know, as a teenager, you sometimes have arguments with your parents that you need a third person.
You're like, Uncle, I'm going to talk to you about this. Just don't tell Mom.
Yeah. That's who I.
Yes, exactly.
That's who I went to.
Yes.
So in that respect, you know, and that's kind of like how I modeled how I live my life now. I have a very, like, my calendar is color coded, which if you would have asked 20-year-old me, like, do you ever imagine yourself having a color coded calendar? I would have laughed and said, are you crazy? Yes. I can't even like keep an appointment in a single day in my calendar.
Right.
What about a color coded calendar? So growing up, I had all these people around me to actually set examples.
Yes.
And I think that's really important, right?
Yeah,
so
emulation.
You emulate, even though you're not ready to emulate when you're a kid, but eventually when you start growing up, start developing on your own, you start like, oh, this is why Mom did this every morning.
And your frontal lobe's developing and stuff. You're always emulating. Sometimes you're choosing to emulate the opposite direction, but you're still playing off something. I'm going to be the opposite of a doctor. You're still responding off of something you've seen.
Correct.
All right, let's talk about regimen, because I love my regimen.
Yeah.
So I mean, I love waking up the same time every day. I love brushing my teeth every day at the right time. I mean, very regimented.
Okay.
The question is, are you missing something in that regimen that maybe was kind of wild or something? And does the regimen cease becoming a tool for success, and it becomes a mechanism that stops you from having these extemporaneous changes or events? So
here's the thing with regimens, right? And I highly recommend to the audience and to you, I don't know if you've read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yes.
So the premise of a regimen, right, is not necessarily to lock you in a box, right? It's to actually make things in your life easier so you have bandwidth and so you can actually have those.
No, regimen is to keep trauma at bay so you never have to think about your past and why you are as nutty as you are.
Okay, I've never looked at it that way. You know, that's what. Okay, so
I brush my teeth because I've had a root canal. I'm keeping root canal at bay.
okay, sure.
Not because
mean,
it's a good thing to do. I'm keeping trauma at bay.
You see, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
Now, growing up in a Latin American family, ADHD and even doctors around me.
Sure.
So ADHD is not really like a thing you're allowed to have, and I'm stealing that joke.
Yes.
I'm stealing that joke from Marcelo Hernandez
yes.
and his Netflix special.
Yes.
For a long time, I just had it, and I struggled at school because of it, because my attention was not there. So for me, I wake up every day at 5 a.m, and the first thing I do is wake up, I weigh myself, and then I work out. I do that, right? And that's automatic. It doesn't matter. Monday through Friday, it does not matter what happened the night before. My body will wake me up at 5.
Yes.
Like sometimes it will literally wake me up at 4:58.
Yes.
And you see the clock and you're like, I have 2 more minutes to sleep.
Exactly,
what are you doing to me?
And then you're like, I really don't have 2. I have 1.
Yeah,
1 minute and something because it's already past the
You
8.
already thought about it.
Yes.
So, you just get up and get going. And it helps me just like set the mood for the day. You complete that one thing, like that workout, whether it's the best workout of your life or it's just like a normal workout, or even if it's not the greatest workout, you got up and you achieved something, right? From there, like I'll have breakfast, coffee, I'll go shower, brush my teeth, and then I'll head out the door. So by then I've done 3 very important things. First off, I've gotten up and done a thing, so already my day, whatever happens, like I've already accomplished something. Just number 2, good dental hygiene, right? You brush your teeth after you have breakfast, and you leave with a clean mouth. You don't get cavities, or you avoid root canals, like you mentioned. But number 2, I've also like had that time to like wind down and enjoy my coffee as I'm eating breakfast. So that's kind of a nice moment for myself. Little centering moment.
And no one else is up yet.
No, the kids usually will get up around the time I'm finishing my workout and I'm having breakfast, but they're not awake enough yet
they're not functioning and interrupting you. It's like background noise.
Yeah, it's just background noise. But yeah, so, and then in terms of like my day to day now, so like I'll get here to my office, and the first thing I do when I arrive to my office is like close the door and just do a 10-minute meditation, or just sit there for 10 minutes and just like, okay, let me just settle and think. And that sets my mind up for like, okay, we have things to do today, and let's just get going, right? And it is something about having that discipline to like have an actual thing that you do religiously every morning. Kind of like it really sets your tone. It gives you kind of like not necessarily purpose, but it essentially flips a switch in your brain to like, okay, let's kind of lock in.
Yes.
And then for people like me who have ADHD, it really helps us like keep us in an actual like state of mind, because when and there are days where like a fly on the wall is going to distract me from the task at hand. Right?
Absolutely.
And I was telling a student yesterday, one of the things that help people is just having a routine. Exercise will actually help you. That's another reason I exercise. In high school, I had so many extracurriculars just to keep my mind busy and just to keep myself entertained. But you do have to do things with intention, right? Also, if you are somebody with ADHD and you find something you really love, it really helps, because if you really like doing something, even though you have ADHD, your brain is going to be engaged with that thing. Yes,
and actually it will be engaged
more
than the average person. So people don't realize that everything they do is going to have that hyperactivity or the attention deficit. And instead, when you fall into something you love, you get into this meditative state, and it's almost like it's like a brilliant person doing something that they love.
Yes.
So my wife has ADHD. My stepdaughter does too. So I do not, and so I've learned so much in the past 7 or 8 years. I've read about it, talked about it, seen routines, and ADHD is a very fascinating thing, because I think it's either been diagnosed more or misdiagnosed more. I haven't figured that out, or maybe it's just becoming understood and accepted more.
And actually this conversation is very well timed. So yesterday, So I teach general physiology. I don't know if you know this in biology. It's basically we cover different systems, so the nervous system, sensory systems, cardiovascular, respiratory, reproductive. So we go, and it's a 4,000 level course, right?
You go into the parasympathetic and sympathetic system and all that, so people understand adrenal glands and stress and all that. Okay,
and
good.
We do cover the endocrine system as well. But so last week, one of the students asked me at the end of the class, because we're covering nervous system, we're about to wrap up on that. Can you talk about how the dopamine system is influenced by Vyvanse, which is an ADHD medication that's widely used now? And this student really seemed very interested in like understanding how Vyvanse works. Later, I found out she's interested because she disclosed it to the class that she actually has ADHD.
Right.
I did cover like how the neurobiology of these drugs work, but I also gave them like an actual like history on ADHD and the first incidences, first descriptions. So I don't know if you know this, you probably come up with it in your research. There's actual writings that date back all the way to the 1700s on doctors of inattention, and then in the 1800s, 1902, we got the first actual medical description of attention, and then overall it started snowballing. Adderall, so methylphenidate, became FDA approved in the 60s.
The most popular one.
So which is the most popular one, and Ritalin. And then, you know, now we know that there's an actual genetic component to it. So you were talking about your wife and your stepdaughter, right? So my kid, my 15-year-old, he has ADHD. And, you know, he most likely inherited it from me. And we talk about it, like, you know, he's like, oh, yeah, I can see where you have ADHD, where I don't, and how ours are different in different ways, right? But, you know, I gave them the whole spiel. And then in terms of diagnosis, it's underdiagnosed in women compared to males. So there's so for every 2 to 3 boys that get diagnosed, you get 1 female diagnosis. And part of it is because women are their symptoms are more internally driven. So they will have more of an internal voice, and when they're actually like showing their symptoms, it's more of an attentive, it's more of like they are hyperactive, but they are hyperactive inward. While, you know,
the chaos is
inside.
And the male subject is just knocking stuff over and spinning around.
So like, I mean, even if you go back to the earliest recollections of like ADHD in boys, it's just like this kid is like jumping up and down. It's like can't sit still in a chair. So that's part of the reason. The other thing is like with women, you also have an entire hormonal system that comes online with estrogen, progesterone that affects mood, and ADHD also can affect mood. So you have to really like kind of parse those out.
So my wife's description, so whenever she was diagnosed and got on Vyvanse, when she first took it, she says, I feel so normal.
So when I was diagnosed when I was 16, I was having some issues at school, and I got put on Ritalin. Now, this was back in the early 2000s. And we were still, you know, it was in early days. Ritalin had been in for a while, but Ritalin was a very dirty drug back then still. And the side effects that Ritalin can give you, one of them is insomnia. One of them is like mood swings. And for me, the dosage I could put in was not great. I had a lot of sleep issues.
And what does dirty drug mean exactly?
It means that it had other interactions with your system or is not as purified.
So it's not as targeted. So there's other stuff that comes along with it.
There's other stuff that might come along with it.
So you're talking about insomnia and stuff. Some people call it kind of zombification.
Yeah. So after a couple of weeks, I basically came off it. And
did you dose yourself off slowly? Did you go cold turkey?
I had to go cold turkey.
Okay.
But then I was very resistant to taking any ADHD medication.
Right. Because with that, you're like, I don't need anything else because I would never want to feel that way again.
Yeah. If this is what it's going to do to me, never going to touch it. So, and I struggled a bit because when you see people who can maintain attention for a long period of time, and here you are trying, because we really try, and it does not work, and your brain just can't handle it, you do get frustrated. Like, you have conversations with people, And then 20 minutes later, if somebody asks you what you talked about,
Yes.
you really can't tell them because
No.
you don't remember. You'll remember a week later, maybe.
Yes.
For a long period of time, I scheduled things. I was very regimented. And then I came to grad school.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to read a lot. I had to do a lot of like writing. So I started creating deadlines for myself. I talked with my PhD mentor. I was like, hey, I know you didn't give me a deadline,
Yes.
but you're going to have to give me a deadline.
Yes.
And they need to be hard deadlines.
Yes.
So I got to grad school that way. And then I came and did my postdoc. And when I was writing my first research grant, I struggled. I struggled so hard writing it. Like I would sit there in front of a piece of paper and maybe write a sentence in an entire day. And I was like, okay, well, you know, I am a scientist. I've studied the nervous system long enough. I've studied how these drugs work. Like I know enough neurobiology to know that there has to be a safe drug or something that I can use at least for a while. And, you know, when I first took Adderall, because I hadn't tried it, I had that same experience your wife had. I felt like a normal person. Like, and it was like, oh my God, is this what being normal feels like?
Yes.
This is awesome.
Were you mad? Like, what's wrong with me? Did you ever say, what is wrong with me?
I did.
Especially with a high achieving family and all this stuff.
Yeah, when I was a kid and when I was like going through college, so, you know, I was kind of upset. I didn't know what was wrong. And as, you know, as you age, as you read, as you start understanding, you know, I had to accept there was nothing wrong with me.
Yes.
That's the first step, is to just, you know, there's nothing wrong with you. This is how it is.
Yes.
The second step is to find the correct tools to actually make yourself be able to help yourself, right? And for years, and I'm talking for like a decade, I was very hesitant to take any type of medication.
Sure.
Because I had very, very horrible side effects, so
Yes.
I wasn't going to do it. But in the case of like these stimulants, if you have ADHD, it literally just brings you back to whatever the social baseline is.
Yes.
And it does take a lot of the strain and the stress of like having to force yourself to concentrate on a thing. Like, and I realized that within the first couple of weeks, I was talking to my doctor about it, because when you take a stimulant, right, there's a couple of side effects you have to be careful with. Sleep is one of them,
Yes.
which I experience. Heart rate. So your heart rate increases when you take a stimulant.
Sure.
So you shouldn't exercise if you take a stimulant, or at least the first couple hours after you take it. The other one is blood pressure. So you can have changes in your blood pressure, and that can be really bad.
Yes.
It leads to all sorts of negative outcomes. So, you know, I was taking blood pressure. I was monitoring how I felt, the mood, and all that.
You were your own experiment.
I was running my own experiment on myself. And I think I went to a seminar that week. And research seminars are an hour long. They're very dense in the research that's being given. And I literally walked out of that room and I was like, oh, wow, I've been missing out.
Yes.
Like, I have been missing out. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, we're in this. And we found a treatment and we found a solution. And, you know, I still monitor it.
And so so did you go from a bachelor's straight to a PhD?
Yes.
Okay. So and you got the master's along the way. So you're a bachelor's student. You do okay. Grad school is now this new, not just up one level. It's like a plus 10 on intensity. And you're like, okay, to handle the stress, the anxiety, and to succeed in this environment, you realize you needed to somehow get yourself treated to be able to succeed here. Otherwise, it would have, the anxiety and or stress or the ability to complete may have been impossible.
So I actually got through the PhD without getting medicated.
Really?
But it was like I had to talk to my PhD mentor and be like, hey, hard deadlines.
Yes. Okay.
No soft deadlines. And we would meet every week. And I even at one point, and I was his first graduate student, so at one point I was like, hey, can I come to your office and just sit there at work? Because the presence of him, having
setting the environment,
setting the environment to like, for me to just like, okay, this is work. We got to do work.
Right. It was a reminder, right? You're in this environment, so it was this constant sort of, I'm in a work environment. What do? I work.
And you don't want to waste anybody's. Like if you're having them sit there with you, and he was doing his own thing most of the time, right? But you don't want to waste somebody's time.
Yes.
You really don't. But then I got to the postdoc level, and that's where I
That's
started
right.
having that struggle of like, oh, I need to do these things for myself without the guardrails that I have built
Yes.
over the years.
Because all of a sudden it's like you're mentored, finish your PhD.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, now you self-drive your career.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing people with ADHD will struggle with. Like if you talk to them over the years, even like children, right? So long as their parents, like if you, and this is why sometimes it doesn't get diagnosed until you get to college age, like your parents are essentially your guardrails, and they
Yes.
set your structure, they set your schedule, but then all of a sudden you're 18, you're in college, you're expected to do all these things you weren't doing before, and all of a sudden, oh,
There's an issue there, yes.
there's an issue and there's a break there.
Which is why the sports and the extracurricular activities and all that are so good, because it keeps everything regimented and
Yep.
stops the drift of
Yeah.
stuff without boundaries.
Yeah, you don't have time to drift. Like
Yes.
if you're so like I was president of the band in high school. I was doing
What instrument?
saxophone, alto.
Oh, you know what's funny? You just did this. I said, what instrument? You didn't go like trombone. You're like, saxophone. Right? He's like, what instrument? Saxophone.
Saxophone.
Right. For the ladies.
Yeah,
Because,
actually.
you know, exactly.
That is actually true.
Your face like, what instrument? Saxophone.
As a high schooler, you want to get the girls.
Yes. You want to be Kenny G.
Yeah, actually.
Yes.
Very much. Very much so. Without the long hair. I could never
Yes.
pull that one off.
No, yeah. All the stuff in high school you did. So you were in band, you said the band leader.
I was the band leader. I was in the honor roll. I was part of the UN club. I used to volunteer. I used to do stage theater prep for like the actual stage crew and all that stuff, lights, mics, and all that stuff. I used to play soccer with friends. I used to go to D&D games with my other friends. So like my schedule was like going from A, B, C, D.
Yes.
Like I always had a path for every single
Yes.
one of my days.
And then it was like sleep.
And then it was like
repeat.
sleep, repeat. Yeah.
Yes.
So there was really no time for like moving around something else or just time to think about
Okay, so you
things.
did Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
Which I did not, even though I'm an 80s kid. I should have, but other people did. I didn't. So are y'all watching Stranger Things? Did y'all watch Stranger Things?
So I did, yes.
Okay, so did you like the D&D reference and that line thread all the way through as a D&D player?
I really appreciate it, and that's one thing that, and I talk to my kids nowadays about this, like, when you and I were growing up, like...
I'm older than you. What year were you born?
87.
See, I'm 69, so...
You barely look 50.
It's my regimen.
Okay.
And moisturizer.
And moisturizer.
Which is important. What's
Yeah,
the
it's
largest
very important.
organ on the human
your
body?
skin.
The skin. Most
Yeah.
people don't know that. I win that in trivia all the time.
Yeah, so, yeah, no, definitely.
All right, so you're in your postdoc, and so you work with your psychiatrist or psychologist, and you get on some medication, and you're like, boom.
Yep.
I've been struggling with this. It's that easy for other people. Did you have a before and after where all of a sudden, did you accelerate in your postdoc and achieve more stuff, or was it just less anxiety, less stress, less force of walking through the molasses every day?
Both.
Oh, okay.
And that's the interesting thing, right? All that energy that I was devoting to try to like focus on a thing,
Yes.
I could then now redirect to the actual task. So it's not, and I don't think I'm a genius or anything, right? But all that mental capacity that I was trying to like put aside to just keep myself in focus, now I could use to like read more. I could use it to actually get stuff on paper and write and put those grants out. I could
Yes.
use it to like actually, like when I started looking for tenure track positions, just like focus more on like, okay, so what do I want? What places do I want to live in? Like, for example, like when I applied here to MTSU, I was like, oh, this would be really ideal because I get to stay in Tennessee. My kid is already in high school. So like I can, and I kind of like the area, so I can just like do the thing, right? So I don't even have to move. And then, when the interview came along, I remember they offered me like, do you want a hotel? And I was like, I live 40 minutes away. I can drive.
Yes.
I would rather sleep in my own bed if I need to drive.
Yeah, oh,
both times.
absolutely, yes.
So, and I actually think that that helped my interview, because whenever you travel somewhere and you have to sleep the night before an interview, you never sleep.
No, because it's not your bed.
Yes.
It's not the same comfort, not your pillow. Different smells, different noises, different lighting conditions. It's just different.
So that's, it did propel my career forward. And now, so I look back at like the amount of stuff that I've done since I've been on the medication versus this stuff, and I was like, I try to live my life with, I don't look back and say I regret things.
Yes.
But if I could change one thing out of my postdoc and maybe, even my PhD, I would have probably gotten on this sooner.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it would have made a difference in terms of the research output, in terms of like what ended up happening. But in terms of the anxiety of the actual like committed bandwidth to it, it would have definitely helped.
Yeah. So it's interesting because you talk about these ADHD medications are stimulants. So you have to be careful of, like you said, blood pressure and all this other stuff. But at the same time, if you have ADHD and you are stressing and straining over staying focused and getting tasks done, that anxiety itself does put a stress on the parasympathetic system and trigger stuff. So in some ways, even though you may have a stimulant effect, there is kind of an offset for the body getting into a more relaxed state, so you don't have all those flight or fight all the time.
You're absolutely right. And that's kind of the other funny story about all this, right? So my 5 a.m. wake up, do workout thing, this started after I started my postdoc, because when I was 29, I went for a checkup. And during grad school, I had gained a bunch of weight. I was 290 pounds. And the doctor was like, hey, you're a bit hypertensive. Your liver numbers are very elevated. And, so I want to give you actual statin. I want to give you something for your blood pressure. And you're likely pre-diabetic, so we're going to handle that as well. And I was like, okay, listen, I get it that my family history is not great. Is there anything I can do that does not require me taking medication? And at that point, he's like, okay, well, if you stop drinking alcohol and you lose about 50 pounds, then we can recheck your numbers. But nobody does that.
Right.
So I'm giving you the scripts.
Yes.
I went home. I thought about it, never followed the scripts. So I started working out, started going to the gym, dialed in on my diet, stopped drinking, went cold turkey for 2.5 years. Not necessarily because I was drinking too much, but there is a very strong correlation between alcohol use and sleep quality. And that's something that, as a person that studies circadian rhythms and biological clocks and sleep, I was very interested in actually dialing in. So, I did it, and within a year I had lost the 50 pounds. But then I was like, oh, but now we're going to really dial it in.
Yes.
And I went
I'm just getting started.
I'm just getting started.
Yes.
Because, well, I started seeing all these changes, like my mood felt better. And at 290 pounds, I didn't want to admit it at the time, but like I would wake up with my back hurting.
Yes.
And with like some of my limbs used to be numb.
How tall are you?
I am 5'10".
Okay.
Yes, 290 pounds for a person that's 5'10" is a lot of weight to carry.
Yeah, I'm 6 foot, and at my peak, I was 390. I was just under 400.
Yeah, so, and it's a lot.
Yes.
It is really a lot of weight to carry for our frames. So I kept going, and I got down to 100. The lowest I've been is 190 pounds. And there, I was like, okay, we're good. Like we started having some other side effects, because if you lose weight too fast, then your body goes into this like metabolic drift.
Yes.
So I kind of was like, okay, I'm happy here. So I've been stabilizing for the past 4 or 5 years at between 195 and 205. That's where my weight sits at. It doesn't go up or doesn't go down below those. But then, I can do push-ups now, like I can do for my class last semester, and we'll do this for this next semester when we get to muscle physiology. Their bonus for the exam is a push-up competition. And if one of the students can beat me, the entire class gets the bonus. They did last year. They had to do over 70 push-ups. I can do pull-ups now, which I can never do pull-ups in high school.
Yes.
So, I can deadlift 500 pounds, which nobody needs to do that, but like, so I started like testing all these things. So I sleep better.
Push the limits.
So see what my body can actually do.
And the human body is
It's
a
amazing,
crazy, wild machine. The fact you can actually have a human being that could be 90 pounds and some could be 900 pounds.
We control our environment. That's the other thing.
Yes.
We control our environment. We have ample food supply. That's
Yes.
the other thing. So, when I dialed in all that and I went back to the doctor and he runs my labs, he's like, oh my God, you look amazing. You
Yes.
look great. How'd you do it? And this was before like Ozempic and all these drugs
Yes.
were out. But then I had another problem. My liver levels, like my liver enzyme levels were elevated. It got to the point where they actually had to do a liver biopsy. But at that point I was working out 9 hours a week.
Yes.
I was running. My heart rate, my base heart rate
Yes.
was in the low 50s.
Oh, awesome.
In the morning.
That's athlete level.
And then that day I didn't have anything to eat, anything to drink for the biopsy. When I get to the hospital and they hook me up to the machines start beeping and the
Yes.
nurses are freaking out. And
Yeah.
I don't know why. And one of the nurses is like, do you feel okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm just a bit hungry and thirsty. But other than that, I'm good.
Right.
Your heart rate is 38.
Yes.
And your blood pressure is like 100 over 70 or something.
Right.
Like it's not super low, but it's
You're not flatlining.
I'm not flatlining, but
they're worried
concerned.
about is in that area.
It's in that area of concern.
Yes.
So for my liver biopsy, the doctor then comes along and he's like, hey, we were going to sedate you and put you to sleep while we did the biopsy, but we can't do that. So we're going to have to do local anesthesia.
Oh, yikes.
So, and
You
I'm
didn't
like,
get up and walk away like that? I'm like, no, sorry, doc.
no, because I wanted to know. I actually wanted to know if there was something wrong with my liver. As a scientist, you know, they had given me all of the data, and I was like, I did some research on my own, which is you should never do. Even if you're a scientist, even if you're a normal person, if a doctor tells you, hey, we have to do this test, don't go and research why you have to do the test. Just listen to your doctor.
All my MD friends, everyone said, the worst thing that ever happened in this world for healthcare was Google.
Yes.
Because people will walk in, and then it was WebMD. People will walk in with these sheets of paper. I know what's wrong with me. You need to give me the script. And then the direct pharmacology adds 2 patients. Tell your doctor to write you a script for Suvicia, and that makes you like sushi and sake and have great legs simultaneously. Don't worry about the side effects, including blindness, death, nausea, and all this stuff.
Don't worry
all
about
that. Yeah. And now with these LLMs, with AI,
oh, it's even worse.
I'm not chatting with many physicians anymore. But I'm sure they're like, I don't even know what to do whenever some of these LLMs have more data associated with them than any MD would. So some of them are really good. But if you prompt it wrong, it will tell you whatever it is you desire. It's like, you know what? I need to be 7 foot tall, and I need these 12 shots, and I need to have this. And it'll eventually convince you, yes, this is exactly what you need. Ask your doctor for this.
Well, long story short, just to tell you the end of that, like they did the biopsy while I was awake. So I was talking to the doctor about my research.
As he was cutting on you.
As he was poking me and poking my liver.
So he did what, a little incision?
Little incision and very big needle.
Yeah, and then he went and just grabbed a piece of it?
Grabbed 2, because when he grabbed the first one, I was like, hey, since you're already in there, just grab a second one so you never have to do this again.
At a random place away from the same zone, right?
Yes.
So it's like you're sampling here, get another piece of liver over here.
As a good scientist.
You can't do it in the same zone because then you may have common morphology in that same place. You need differentiator.
But long story short, my liver was completely fine. No fatty. I don't have any fat in my liver anymore. So I dealt with that. The problem was that I was working 9 hours a week.
Yes.
So when you strain your muscles enough, you cause muscle breakdown.
Yes.
And it elevates the same enzymes that are liver damage markers.
Yes.
So I went to a sports medicine physician, did a test where I didn't work out for a week, which is the most horrible thing you can do somebody who loves, because now I do enjoy it. I really do enjoy working out. It's very cathartic. But then my liver enzymes came down, and I was like, hey, doc, can I go back to working 9 hours a week? So that's what I do now.
Yes. So the liver enzyme is a measure of some health concern to one direction, or lactic acid or some other.
So when you're exercising, especially hypertrophy, you have, and especially when you're actually breaking your muscles, it releases these 2 enzymes.
Okay.
that are basically the same enzymes that your liver uses when it's breaking down protein or it's breaking down any sort of
which makes sense because you're splitting the muscle tissue.
Yeah.
And so you are breaking the protein bonds. That's the lifting word, or it's like you're tearing your muscle.
You're tearing, yeah.
Right, and then the muscle's then going to regrow with more fibers,
yeah.
and it's going to be stronger. So that's how you got these guns here.
Yeah, that's how you got
all
the
that
guns.
was just flabby stuff,
Yeah.
and this has been worn and torn.
Yeah.
And so my liver had enzymes in it. Right, liver's on this side, right? Yeah.
Other side. Yeah.
But this liver, I got a big liver. It goes over. Either way, that liver, as this muscle's regrowing, has the same effect as if I was in a bad metabolic state.
Yes. So, that happened to me, and then now, and that's what I noticed, that the doctor was very concerned when I got on Adderall, because he was like, your heart rate's not increasing. I was like, well, I'm thinking I'm a bit more relaxed now.
Yes.
Exactly. To tell that. But
you notice I gave you a chance to bring that full circle.
Yeah.
And the ability to do that is crazy because that's been about 7 minutes or so. But you've got all the lines planned out. So you're like, bring it all the way back.
Yeah.
It's a superpower. It really is. It's great.
It is
That's
a superpower.
Great.
And then, that has allowed me to really focus on my research. And now, as a professor here, starting a research lab where I have to manage people in different projects, it does help me keep on task whenever I'm meeting with a student with a particular project and then jumping to the next one.
So as you manage people over time, which is a high stress thing, have you added alcohol back into your diet?
Only on special occasions. Regularly during the week, I try not to, just because I have noticed, especially as I gotten older, that I'm very much a lightweight now. And then the second thing is
you're a cheap drunk.
Yeah, I'm a cheap drunk. I'm a very cheap drunk. And I sleep so much better when I don't drink.
Sleep in general, or just getting into REM sleep?
In general.
In general, okay.
Yeah, I feel more rested in the morning. I feel more cognizant. I don't have a hangover, which is a great thing.
Yes.
So that's kind of it on that end. And then, running a lab here has been quite an experience. I feel very blessed about that.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about your research.
Yeah.
So your research is in circadian rhythms.
Yep.
Circadian rhythm is cycles of day-night. Is that right?
So I'll give you the definition, and we can parse it out, right? So
Okay.
most organisms on the planet, most animals, have a biological clock. And that biological clock helps you synchronize your behavior and your physiological processes to changes in your environment. So, for example, one of the things that'll help you with is waking up in the morning. So humans, for example, cortisol, which is thought to be a stress hormone, is released most in the morning, and it helps you wake up. It helps you be alert. Now, a lot of people have heard about using melatonin to help you sleep, which is another hormone. Your body actually releases melatonin at night to actually help you go to sleep.
Right.
And these rhythms of releasing hormones, of when you're hungry, on where you're more alert, on your sleep-wake rhythm is it's not exactly the same as a circadian rhythm, but there is a system that controls it and interacts with it. All these things are actually rhythms controlled by your internal clock, right? And your internal clock is responding to this external environmental cue. And in the case of the majority of organisms, that external time giver, or if we're using the jargony term Zeitgeber, so it was coined, it's a German word, basically says time giver, is light.
Yeah.
So
sunlight
in particular. So the sun. So we evolved. Yeah. So we evolved to actually follow sun and temperature and other environmental cues such as food availability, right? So your gut, your stomach has an actual circadian clock independent from the one in your brain. Now the one in your brain is the one that orchestrates and synchronizes the other clocks in your body, so they actually operate at the appropriate time.
We have all these different employees right in here that have their own clock and expectations, and the brain is the boss trying to herd the cats of the rhythm of your body to try to say, let's keep all in pace, doing something together, so we're not going against each other.
So the boss is how it was thought of before. Now it's more of like a orchestra conductor, right? So it's trying to keep them.
You've been in music. Is the orchestra conductor, is that the boss? I've never seen a conductor up there who's doing the tap, tap, tap like this. They're not looking, saying, you can choose to follow me or not. It is, you will move the way I told you to move.
Well, the conductors want to keep everybody in time, right? So you can have different parts of, so like you can have the brass, and then you can have the woodwinds, and they're doing different things at different times.
Yeah, because the brass is doing sexy stuff, Kenny G style, and the woodwinds are not getting the girls.
Well, I mean, the woodwinds are getting the girls.
They are?
Yeah, the woodwinds get more girls than the brass.
Are you sure?
Yeah, the brass will ruin your mouth, so you don't kiss that well. So I've heard.
What?
So I've heard. But anyways, essentially, they keep it all in sync, right?
Okay.
So you don't necessarily need to digest your food when you wake up in the morning because you haven't had any food.
Right.
Also, you don't want to be digesting in the middle of the night while you're sleeping.
Right, because it actually goes to storage.
Yeah. So all of that is part of your circadian clock. And I actually became obsessed with the circadian clock when I started my Ph.D.
Okay.
And I work with honeybees specifically, which is a very interesting organism to work with because you have to go and tend to the bees. So I became a beekeeper.
Are you a beekeeper now?
Oh, yeah, I'm still a beekeeper. So
how many hives do you have?
Right now we have 6 hives at a friend's house that I'm relocating to MTSU to start the lab hives.
This isn't Keely O'Brien's husband's place, is it?
No.
Okay. You know Keely O'Brien?
Yes, I do know Keely.
You know her dad, her husband?
Jeff, yes.
Yeah, he's got, what, 100 hives?
He
or
has
whatever?
he's an actual beekeeper, and that's what he does for a living. So I do know him. He actually has been super instrumental in helping me get.
She was just here yesterday. She was actually here and brought me a little jar of the honey.
She brought you the beekeeping lab.
That was
the beekeeper club honey.
Which exactly it was in the bourbon barrel.
Ah,
yes.
That's really good honey, by the way.
See, the problem is I've been on keto since March 1 last year, and so I may do a little taste, but that's about all.
So when I started my PhD, I was really interested in looking at the molecular clock and looking at these genes that control the circadian rhythms. But I joined a lab, and I had beekeeping experience from my undergraduate research, where I did some learning and memory with bees. And bees are really cool because they can actually learn where a food is located in a field, navigate back to their hive, and they communicate to the other bees, hey, there's food X many degrees at this time of day, and it's this quality of food. They do it via a dance, what they call the dance language. They do this little dance, and you can actually mathematically decode where the food source is. So if you see a bee dancing,
this is gonna be an image. It's got to have a dancing bee, maybe you've had John Travolta bee.
Yeah,
it's like the clover honey's over here.
Kind of exactly
at 3
like
a.m. It's not a good time, but 3 p.m. the sun's just right.
3 p.m. sun's
Staying alive.
Yep, that is actually I've danced the waggle dance for the students on occasion.
Awesome.
I have videos.
Are you in a bee outfit?
No. But I have a video, and if it doesn't work when I'm doing these presentations, I'll actually go and be like, okay, I'm going to demonstrate, and I'll do the.
Do they ask you if that's on the test?
Yes, sometimes. Anyways, so this lab was really interested in starting a new model with honeybees, and they did not have anybody that did beekeeping. And my PhD mentor Jose, he was like, you've worked with bees, you're not afraid of them, you can go and do the beekeeping. So why don't you have this project and develop it on your own? Right. So his lab studies Drosophila, which is a genetic model. I never touched a fly in my entire PhD. But I learned a lot. We learned that bees, actually, the development of the bee circadian system.
And is this only honeybees, or is this bumblebees, or all
honeybees?
Bee types?
And I did some wasp work at one point, but mostly honeybees.
Who likes wasp?
Wasp is really interesting because they're... And okay, let me...
Do they serve a purpose?
They do, actually.
And do they actually have a predator? What's the predator of a wasp?
Wasps are going to get preyed on by praying mantises in Asia, for example. I don't know if you've seen grasshoppers. Oh, here. No, here.
Because I want to sell a bundle at Costco. No. This is the wasp killer, which is 25 praying mantises or whatever.
No, here they won't have really a predator like that.
Well, everything needs a predator, especially if they're things I don't like.
No,
like
because
wasp.
you have apex predators that don't have so killer whales, for example, and that's a bad term, by the way. Orcas would be the proper term. So orcas, free willies, yes. They are the apex of the ocean. There's nothing above them. They hunt sharks for sport and only eat their livers.
Yes.
But they don't need a predator.
yeah. No, fair enough.
They're not out of control.
But you're telling me a wasp is an apex?
A wasp is one of the apex, depending on the location. So, like,
I just don't see the wasp as like the lion.
well, I mean, they keep
Top of
things
the food chain?
Top of the food chain. They're not that big in numbers compared to like what they eat, right?
Oh, fair enough. Yes.
So they actually, the system kind of regulates itself in that regard. But the wasp is interesting because honeybees are what we call eusocial, or they're at the highest level of sociality, right?
Yes.
They live in groups. The queen is the only reproductive. All these colonies, it's kind of considered a superorganism, each colony. So the wasp is an interesting comparison because they live by themselves. They can start a small colony. And then they can, if you deprive them of that, they can go and start their own colony, every single individual. So they're considered what primitively eusocial. And what we found was that depending on the sociality, so if we compare fruit fly, which is non-social, and then honeybees and wasps, the level of flexibility of the circadian rhythm, the circadian clock in a population, increases with sociality.
Really?
So, yeah, so that's one of the things.
So time becomes, temporal aspects become more important with socialization.
Less important.
Less important, okay.
So it's less rigid in the sense of if you have a group of people, you can have certain people have a clock that's longer or shorter, so they're not doing the same thing exactly at the same time, or responding to the same thing at the same time. So imagine if a honeybee hive, 100% of the bees came out and stung you at once for a single, like, a poking or a simple response, right? That colony dies because the bees, when they sting, they die.
Right, they rip off their thorax.
They rips up their stinger and it rips up their thorax, but then, those all die. You don't want that. You want a measured response.
Yes. And
it's kind of like our human body. Imagine if your body, like, had a drastic reaction to just like a wood chip going into your skin or something like that. That would not be really good.
Right. A splinter should not cause death.
A splinter should not cause death. And it should not cause a super massive reaction to your system. It should be a localized reaction. Yeah, very proportional to the trauma. So we found that out, and we were really excited. But then we also found out that during my PhD, a lot of the experiments that were being done in honeybees particularly were being done at this temperature that was not the temperature that the bees would keep the hive at inside. Okay. So we started testing different temperatures, and we found out that, first off, if you take a bee and you put it as a young bee, just 1 day old after they emerge from their little cells, their circadian clock behavior would not develop, so they wouldn't show rhythms as they aged if you put them in cold. So 25 degrees Celsius, which is room temperature for those of listening, and the bees would keep their hive at 35, which is about 89, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So they need that temperature to properly develop their neuroanatomical system.
Interesting.
And to actually show behavioral rhythmicity. So that's one of the things that we found out. Now, this is relevant because, we're experiencing a lot of changes to our climate, right?
Yes.
Especially here in Tennessee. Our climate has never been very steady or very, like, passive. Like, we go from cold to hot to cold to hot to cold to hot.
Sometimes 30, 40, 50 degree
in a single
deltas
day.
In the same day, yes.
Yeah. And that basically can create a problem for the bees because they rely on these external cues and on this ability to keep temperature to actually do their foraging, their work, to tell time of day, right? So I got really interested in that, but then I was like, okay, so I want to see this in the brain.
Yes.
I want to actually see the properties of these neurons.
Inside the bee brain.
Inside the bee brain, yeah.
And bees have brains that are
Bees do have brains. They're about the size. They're smaller than, I would say, like if you think about like a chickpea or a pigeon pea, actually. They're about a quarter of a pigeon pea.
So when someone says, hey, you're a pea brain, they're calling you a honeybee.
No, I mean, the pea is about actually the size of an entire bee, so less than that.
So a chickpea.
So a tenth of that.
Yeah, okay. So like
just
quinoa. What are we going to use?
Yeah,
here?
like a quinoa.
A quinoa. Okay.
A piece of quinoa would be about a brain. Yeah.
And so it'll be you quinoa brain.
Yeah, something like that.
That's it. But I mean, what is the mass of the brain relative to the density of the body? Because we have these giant noggins up here.
It's not that big. The majority of the body, but they do really complex things too.
Yes. As a collective.
As a collective. Yes. So now
they're a network.
Yeah. So now my lab here is studying how these neurons develop.
Okay.
and what environmental factors affect their development.
Not just the neurons developing, but the neural pathways
the
that are
neural
developing?
pathways of the circadian clock, yeah.
So you're measuring inside the size of a quinoa brain, inside a honeybee, the neurons and the neural pathways and synaptic activity within that?
Not synaptic activity
Okay.
yet. That is the goal in the next couple of years. But right now, how the network develops and how dense it is, or what the lack of density is given an environmental factor. Like, an environmental factor can be having more bees around you, temperature, pesticide, herbicide, light regimen. So all these things we can easily test in the lab and in the field.
And so I heard from Keeley
Yeah.
that there are stuff that prey upon or there's organisms that can affect honeybee colonies, and that some people are spraying their bees to get rid of a pest on a bee, and that is making it through the food chain, often into the honeys that people are consuming, not realizing they are getting some of these trace.
Yeah, that's actually
things in there.
Yeah, so that's actually the other thing that we kind of have to deal with in my lab, and as well as what Keeley mentioned. So a lot of the treatments that we use for the bees can actually cross the blood-brain barrier of not just the bees, but our blood-brain barrier. So like, the bees will take it into the colony, or you spray it into the colony. Honey gets made, it sticks in the honey, then a human eats it, and at low levels, probably not going to do anything wrong to you, but over time it accumulates, and then you can have a reaction.
Okay.
So one of the things that I'm doing with Keeley, and we started collaborating on this when I started here at MTSU, we're looking at honeys from different places in Tennessee and trying to see what we find in them in terms of like herbicide, pesticides, any type of like chemicals that you use. Now, more relevant to my research is that all these chemicals that like anybody that's doing beekeeping sprays on their bees also interact with what the bees might experience outside in the real world. So pesticide exposure, for example, for a bee, that happens when the bee visits the flower. And they bring back that pesticide to the colony with them. Now, what the bee doesn't realize, what the person that's spraying doesn't realize, is that that chemical that you're spraying to help the bee get rid of like the mites or the beetles or whatever pests you're trying to control actually interacts with the pesticide and increases the effect of the pesticide on the bee's system 5-fold or 10-fold.
So farmer out here spraying their crop of flowers to keep whatever away so it doesn't die, so they can harvest and make money. Bees are over here that have some little pest on it, and the beekeepers are spraying to protect them. All of a sudden, the bees flying with whatever chemicals on them, helping them, to now that flower that has a different chemical on it, helping it. Now there's interactions in a way that neither the farmer nor the beekeeper were expecting, because the bee is truly cross-pollinizing these two different sort of agriculture chemicals.
Yes. You have massive losses in bees. Your bees are not going to perform well even if they survive. And when you think about it, so bees, honeybees specifically, they account about 1/3 of the world food supply in terms of pollination.
Yes.
Right? In the States alone, it's about $28-29 billion industry. So, this
just
is
the pollination
just
industry.
pollination and then production of honey, anything that has to do with honeybees and pollinators.
So moving those around for the almond crop, moving around to the orange crop and the other stuff nationally and stuff on the back of those 18-wheelers and stuff.
Yep. And every year we see 18-wheelers just like dump in the middle of the highway, and the bee apocalypse is...
Yes, because they've actually had a colony collapse, right?
Yeah.
And then they just throw them off the side of the road because everything's dead? Or?
Well, no, they don't throw them off the side of the road. So, like, you can have the 18-wheelers, sometimes they'll... people have all these instances where they want to drive and get to the places faster to set them up, and they have car accidents, or they try to drive in the snow.
Okay, I got you.
And you get these reports of like, truck full of bees in the road. Like,
that is so... I got you. Instead of an oil spill, it's just...
Yeah, it's kind of like an oil spill, but it's a bee spill.
Bee spill.
Yeah.
That's interesting. What else would you like to share with me that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Let's see. So in terms of research, I am very excited because last semester I started here at MTSU. Now I have 2 graduate students and multiple undergrads in my lab, so we're getting everything set up and geared. We're going to bring bees into campus at some point and have like our setup and start doing experiments. So one of the first things that we want to do, and one of the things that I set out to do as a postdoc and now here at MTSU, is I actually want to like crack the boundary that has limited bee research for the past 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So with honeybees, because they're this big agricultural resource, because of how they live, because we have to keep them outdoors, we really haven't been able to do any type of like reporters for the neurons or labeling of neurons or any type of genetic manipulation. First off, because of the dangers of having an organism this important get genetically manipulated.
Sure.
But then secondly, the genetics are very complex and to do this. And it has been done, but it's so many hurdles to jump that we don't want to go about that. So we're trying to develop new tools to actually be able to label these neurons in live bee brains and then study the properties of these neurons. And then how the ultimate goal of my lab is to understand how these neurons communicate time information to other parts of the brain, to like the learning and memory centers, to the olfaction centers, for example. And then how do environmental factors affect this at the not just behavioral level, which we have been really good at doing so far, but at the molecular level, and then at a social structure level, right?
Yes.
So one of the really cool things about bees, because they're social, you can then use them as a model to study social dynamics, which is something that within circadian rhythms has not been done very much, because circadian rhythms have mostly been studied at an individual level, and when you put two organisms together, then you can have an interaction.
Yes, right.
And, you know, humans, for example, we're very social.
Yes.
We know that stress, that social isolation can lead. I mean, we use social isolation in prisons as a punishment.
Yes. You go to solitary, and people that go to solitary will, after they come out, will go, I will do anything not to be left alone again.
Yeah. So you know, it is a stressor. So we're going to be able to test that in a species that's even more social than we are.
Yes.
And then we're also going to be able to stress, or not stress test, but actually see how having multiple individuals at once in a cage, how actually that synchronizes the rhythms of those individuals over time. So we have a lot of cool research that's going to start shaping up, start gearing up. The benefit of working with bees, which a lot of people are like, why don't you work with mice? Why don't you work with flies? Is that I can solve problems at an agricultural level because I'm studying a pollinator. I can do basic science. So my lab is, for all intents and purposes, a neurophysiology and neuroanatomy lab. I can also solve issues that affect human health. Using honeybees as a model.
So using the honeybee model, and then what we learn from there, because it's more simplistic, because it's a quinoa size, and then we take all those lessons and say, how can we
extrapolate that
to the human brain, which is so complex. So, and we do that with all sorts of stuff. And the idea is we're trying to understand ourselves by simplifying, learning, and bringing it back and asking if it applies.
Correct. And, you know, we say that the honeybee is a simple system, but honeybees can do math. They can actually tell time of day better than we can. They have multiple memories and multiple flowers that they visit in multiple locations in a day. And they also communicate. So, and we recently found out, there's a very nice study on bumblebees, that positive reinforcement and positive feedback actually helps bees perform better.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So, and that's a very anthropomorphic characteristic that bumblebees can actually do. So it's like, okay, so even though they're simpler, how much simpler are they really?
Yes. No, exactly. I want to thank Manuel for joining us today on the Research Minute podcast. And remember, if you have ADHD, you have a superpower. Find the tools on how to use it to your advantage.